Hey everyone, it's Steven here. Welcome to another episode on the channel. Today I'm actually doing a video with Bill. His handle on Twitter is Cell9000, one of the initial organizers of FriesDAO, which I'm also a member of. You might have seen that I did a video already on FriesDAO and super excited about the DAO, and really excited to have Bill come and do a talk with us. Yeah. Hey, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. It's funny that we did this kind of almost instantly when we connected within like a 2-hour span. But that's because I'm quite enthusiastic when I stumble across your video that you had the such a conviction to actually do it almost in real time and contribute to FriesDAO and put it out on YouTube. So thank you for your confidence in our endeavor, and that was quite exciting to see. So I'm very happy that you invited me here to chat, and I'm more than happy to talk about what we're doing.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, I'm also really excited about what you guys are doing. I think like DAOs are just amazing, and what you guys have built is actually really cool because I also participate in some syndicates more on the real estate in my real life, and you guys actually being able to arrange all of this in like 1 to 2 months and get about $5 million raised is amazing. I've never seen like this stuff come together so quickly, so I was excited to get you guys on. I guess like sort of my first question is like sort of how did you guys kind of like get the idea for FriesDAO? And how did you guys get started? I know it relates a lot to the meme culture. I was just curious how you guys kind of like planned around the initial start of it, you and the other organizers. Yeah.
Yeah. To be frank, the planning was very, very little in the beginning. So I'm in a couple of different communities, crypto communities, trading groups, and obviously we encountered all sorts of different creative endeavors, from the innovative to the most ridiculous, everything we've seen. And one thing that has been really fascinating to us is our DAOs buying things in the real world. And one of the most well-known ones is Constitution DAO, and that was in November. And then there was a whole level of interest that followed from that. It really took it into the mainstream light. And so we saw more and more DAOs coming about. And it was really myself and a couple of other crypto guys that said, well, why don't we go and put something together and get something in the real world? And we've already joined a whole bunch of DAOs too, and they just weren't run very well. I mean, there are some DAOs that have existed since last year, but more so they're like investment DAOs or DeFi DAOs, and they deal with stuff on chain, and a lot of them are successful. I mean, Uniswap itself is has its own DAO, and a lot of these protocols have their own DAOs. So those are, I guess, besides the point, the main ones we were quite fascinated by were the ones dealing with the real world endeavor. So when we started joining these kind of DAOs, we saw how poorly that they were kind of run, really had no business sense or operational sense. And so myself and a couple of these other guys, we have a lot of business experience in the real world. And we said, why don't we form something and put our experience and our skills to an actual DAO and try to really take it off and build a community out of it. And we kind of ran with the joke as buying McDonald's, because it's always been a crypto meme, right? It's always been, if you suck at trading, let's all work at McDonald's. And it's a joke, not really to, obviously no disrespect to, the hardworking individuals at these fast food restaurants. And obviously there's a level of respect for the work ethic that's involved in that part. But it's always been like a crypto root joke, right? And we said, let's just run with that. And really very little planning came in that process. So by the time the end of December rolled around, and we just said, you know what, we're tired of seeing these other DAOs not really getting their stuff together. Let's just slap a Discord together and let our own community know, and we'll see what happens. And so we did that. And within like 2 days, we ended up having over 1,000 people. I guess word got around, and these people started joining, and it just started snowballing. So now, 2 months later, we've got 4,700 people approaching 5,000 people. And it's been just pretty amazing to see how much traction it became, how much it's gotten. And we've been getting all sorts of people from different areas, different expertise that has joined the community, and not even people that we try to actively recruit, but just organically individuals that have genuine interest in what we're doing, and now they're sort of volunteering and trying to contribute as part of this endeavor. And it's now gotten from meme to something serious. Obviously, we'll have the meme factor still as kind of a fun thing to it, but now we're kind of trying to really put this together. We've looked at legal things, we've looked at the operational side, the business side, the finance side, and we're kind of all collectively putting our skills and knowledge to actually get this to work. So that's the gist of it.
Yeah, for sure. That sounds amazing. I've always loved that meme. Like I see it I was around during like 2018, I think was there as well, to go work at McDonald's. And I actually really like it because my family comes from the restaurant industry as well. It's like, it's pretty, it's cool. I think, although, definitely, it takes a lot of work as well to work in the restaurant industry as well. Yeah. I guess during those 2 days, were there anything like special or things that you guys did to like kind of grow it? Like I saw like some of your initial tweets on the FriesDAO Twitter. It was you guys set up a Discord. Was there anything you guys did to kind of like get people onto the Discord or things like that?
To be honest, not really. I mean, again, we were a part of existing communities. So myself, I've got a trading group that I've stuck around for since the last bull cycle of crypto in 2017. It formed. It's called Moonshot Crypto. It's just basically a trading and investing group. So I stuck around in that for a while, and ended up somehow becoming the de facto sort of head guy there. And so I'm sure that had some level of influence when I shouted out, be like, hey, well, I'm going to be starting this thing with a bunch of dudes, and if you're interested, come join the Discord. And so people joined from that, and then they obviously are in other communities of theirs, and word got around. I think it just kind of snowballed from there. So that definitely helped kind of kickstart the initial volume of users, of members. But other than that, we didn't really do any mass advertising or anything like that, so very organic and network driven.
For sure. Yeah, I think that sounds really cool. I think the whole meme culture was really interesting in there. Did you ever do any other, so you mentioned you did some other participated in some other DAOs before. Did you lead any other DAOs before, or what kind of projects were you kind of like interested before FriesDAO? Yeah.
No, haven't really like led a DAO or been like a value, like a key member or anything in any DAOs or anything. Just kind of just lurked, bought some tokens, or bought the initial raise, and just sat in there to kind of observe how they're kind of run. Again, especially these ones that I had interest of, stuff that's being tied to the real world. I think that's going to be what I think one of the evolutions of crypto, and as we move from stuff that's always been kind of on chain and almost incestuous, if I can characterize it like that, because it's derivatives of trading, and everything everything that you do on DeFi, the value is derived from trading itself. So I think there's going to be an evolution of crypto being tied to the real world. And so we had a lot of interest in, and when they say we, just a bunch of us who think that the next narrative will be real world related crypto initiatives. And I think DAOs are going to be the mediums to facilitate that. So we've been sitting in these DAOs and kind of larking it, but not so much active leadership role or sort of management role in that, not really. Though, we've done I've been involved in other projects before. One of them was Astro Tools a while back. That was when Dex Tools started coming out, and Astro Tools came out as a competitor product. That sort of died off because we sort of hit a development roadblock. There was a crunch for developers. DeFi was just starting to really blow up, and everybody was hiring or recruiting Solidity developers, on-chain developers. So we had some development crunch from that. We couldn't get the right people. So that kind of died off as more competitors came about. And so that was one of the initial DeFi projects I was involved in. Other things, I am a general partner at Launch Code Capital. So that's a investment group that funds early stage DeFi projects, as well as just crypto solutions that we would say, as an investment principle, to look for things that withstand the test of time, can withstand a bear market. So that's probably the core of my I guess crypto involvement, other than the fact that I do trading and I've written some algorithms before, some trading bots. But I think DAOs will be the interesting one. It'll be the fun one, and it'll be the novel one, and it'll be the one that's going to really be community driven. So I'm very keen to see where we go from here.
Yeah, for sure. I think real world DAOs are the future. It's just so much work, all being like an LP on a fund or something like that. Being able to do a DAO style is it's amazingly fast. Like it took me basically the length of that video to join FriesDAO, which is 5 minutes, which is amazing, because becoming an LP on a fund or something like that can take months sometimes. Remember, I tried to join one fund more recently, a couple months ago. It just took 4 months for us to get all the paperwork and stuff. It's crazy. So yeah, I think it's real world is amazing. Have you also heard been involved in sort of the Terra community by any chance? Because the real world projects kind of resonate over there. Duke Kwan's always mentioned crypto needs to do real world stuff and things like that.
Personally, I haven't really dived that deeply into the Terra community. I know it's huge in my own trading group Discord, that there's a huge fan base in my own group with that, and I just never really had the time to diversify into too many ecosystems, to be honest. I think I got a bit of exhaustion after hopping different chains and different ecosystems, but I know that Terra and Anchor Protocol, they have a huge following, and their UST yield, I think, is pretty good. I think still 20% or something. So for stablecoin farming is pretty good. So that's kind of testament to how much I guess interest and participation they have there. But yeah, I mean, that's interesting that you bring that up. So that might be something that we could explore as a community, as FriesDAO, with them.
Yeah, for sure. I think outside of Terra, I think, and maybe and you guys bringing that up, and maybe a couple DAOs, I don't see as many people in the crypto space talking about real world usage, which is it's immensely needed, right? Eventually you're just going to hit a place where if you don't get real world, you don't tie into the physical world, you're just going to have these boom and busts every now and then, and as people leave the ecosystem and stuff. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I was given a chat the other day to the FriesDAO community, and I think I have a thread about it in my Twitter just recently. But I was really trying to make people understand that the problem with DeFi right now is the over collateralization aspect, meaning that when you deposit some funds to a loan protocol like Aave, you're going to have to put in more than you borrow, right? So that way, that if the price goes down too low, you get liquidated and the protocol doesn't lose anything. So when you put in $100, you can only take out 60. So yes, you have some low leverage. You have $160 total, but you can't use that $100 that's sitting in the treasury and the TVL. You can only use the $60 you took. So and you're going to hope that the $100 you put in, let's say if it's ETH, that it's a continued bull market and it keeps going up. Whereas in a bear market, you're probably less inclined to risk your collateral in a protocol like that. So the problem with this is you're kind of inferior to banks, because you can't have true leverage. You can't have what's known as fractional reserve banking and have money supply creation, which essentially how an economy works and how a GDP grows is through debt creation and loan creation, where a bank can loan more money than they actually have physically out. So when a bank has $100, they can loan 90 out, and they only need to keep $10 in the actual bank protocol. And when that $90 gets deposited into a second bank by, let's say, a business person who needed that, they put it into bank number two, and that bank number two has $90, and they can lend out $80. So now you've created $80 plus the $90 in circulation off the initial $100. So that's now more than the $100 principal. So that money creation process is what drives the economy, and crypto doesn't have that. DeFi doesn't have that. You're borrowing $60, and then when the price goes down, you get liquidated, you lose all that, but you're also not creating new value either with that $60. So no aspiring business person would ever use a DeFi protocol, because when you want to build a business, if you already have $100 or, let's say $100,000, why would you lock up $100,000 to take out 60 liquid money that you can spend? That's less than your capital, right? Your existing capital. You want to be able to take out $600,000, for example, right? You want that leverage. So DeFi doesn't solve that problem and is inferior to banks. But the problem with banks and for crypto users is they don't want to go through the whole difficult loan process, credit score, KYC, all that stuff, right? Whereas in DeFi, it's anonymous. But the problem is when you're anonymous, even if there was a DeFi credit system, you could technically rug pull the protocol, because you can build your credit up until you can borrow a lot of money and then just never pay it back and disappear because you're anonymous, right? So that's a problem. So how do we solve this problem of over collateralization and get under collateralization like a real bank, but without going through the traditional bank process? And that's where I believe DAOs come in. DAOs can operate as a pseudo vetting process, whereas where in this situation, you don't have to really dox or anything like that. But if you have a reputation in the crypto community, for example, like myself, once I built up a certain reputation, I'm going to be less inclined to rug pull or less inclined to, damage my reputation, because I have so much at stake. I have so much network built. I have so much value in my own network, in my own ecosystem, that I'm well connected enough that I don't want to ruin that network and I don't want to ruin that reputation. So even though I'm a Vegeta avatar, that I can be in this sort of metaverse world where others in the DAO be like, yes, let's loan Cell 9000 some funds. Well, obviously, I'm kind of doxxed now, but hypothetically, if I was still anonymous, I would still have that inclination to make sure my reputation is maintained. So my reputation, even though it was anon, it's really no different than you building up your identity in the real world. Like it's almost like your social security number. It's almost like your photograph. There's a reputation identity, an aggregate identity you create. So I think DAOs have the capability to facilitate that and loan treasury amounts to reputable individuals that can then build businesses or build real world operations. So FriesDAO is one of the steps to go into that, by using the treasury and dealing with the first type of business that needs less nuanced day-to-day management. And this is why we chose franchises. We started this as a joke, but it kind of, a light bulb went off and realized this is the perfect business operation to test the effectiveness of a DAO, because we don't have to deal with very minute details of like, okay, well, what's going to go on the menu? Where do we get our supply chain? Where we're going to source our food? We just got to deal with first, let's see if we can even make basic money following an existing business model provided to us by a franchise brand. And so we only need to deal with the high level aspects, and that reduces the governance issues of a decentralized community, because there might be some efficiency questions in that regard. But this could be a beautiful learning process and a proof of concept that could be realized and turned into something much greater, where it could be carving a viable niche out of traditional corporations. The business world is worth trillions and trillions of dollars. We just need to take a tiny slice of that and show that DAOs can still operate something viably. And I think there's going to be still that tiny slice resulting in a lot of value, where companies are going to actually start having to pay attention to DAOs and think that they might have to get a piece of that membership as well. So they don't feel like, okay, well, this DAO is going to build a McDonald's right next to my Burger King. That's going to be a problem. Maybe we should get some influence in that DAO too, right? So it could get to that stage.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting how you put it there. It's I think like if the more real world stuff that we eventually do with DAOs, it could like open up DAOs to a lot more stuff. For example, like I was following a lot of the supply chain issues, and it was really interesting that how it's related is that a lot of these ports are actually owned by the city. What if people instead form a DAO, get a lot of these people who have to do all the shipping to fund the DAO, and then hire lawyers and then like lobby I don't know, some of these governments, like the government Oakland owns the port over there, to actually sell the port over to the DAO. They actually always like technically lease it to a company. So that's kind of interesting. Like, what if you did that, but for in other areas as well, and then you could actually like institute government change a lot faster as well through a DAO.
It's certainly possible. I mean, the collective effort of community, and that itself is kind of represents a democratic process where the people can certainly influence a government. And it could certainly get to that stage, right? But I think the challenge right now is seeing if we can build a viable framework, which is right now, obviously, this experiment we're putting to the test. And if that framework is viable and we're successful, it can be easily reproduced in many different industries. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two is actually being able to coordinate an efficient type of governance, right? So we can't try to govern every single little thing, otherwise nothing will get done. So we need to be able to find and strike that right balance between efficiency, but with sufficient democracy. So that's going to be challenge two. And challenge number three, or challenge C, would be the regulatory aspect. I mean, there's a lot of legal hurdles that are discouraging DAOs. And so the hard part is seeing whether these frameworks from, A and B are going to be viable in the legal aspects of wherever, region we're going to be trying to operate in. Because now we're dealing with real world stuff, right? There's going to be way more implications and business law involved, or finance law involved, right? That could affect the way that the DAO needs to operate. So that's a challenge that we have been trying to identify. We've retained attorneys on this. One of the other initial organizers, he's even a registered attorney himself. So we definitely put a lot of due diligence in figuring this out. And the big elephant in the room would be obviously the SEC. So we have to see how we can finally balance, these elements of expectation of profit and all that. It would be really nice for us to do this successfully and like return profits to members. But the fact that the SEC doesn't like the random folks creating like securities, or at least not going, if they don't go through the proper security registration or exemptions, that there's going to be much higher a risk, right? So we have to, in this at least initial stage, explicitly state that there's no expectation of profit. So that's one of the issues, because sometimes saying things like that makes people confused, like, oh, this must be a rug pull, this must be a scam, what's the point if there's no profit? So it's challenging that we have to navigate that messaging and try to make people understand that these are the limitations we have to operate in, and hopefully we can evolve into a stage where we can return some value to token holders. But in the meantime, I mean, it's not to say there's no value. There's always value in network. And I think that's the biggest piece of crypto. And I think a lot of people kind of overemphasize monetary value. Yes, I mean, crypto actually obviously has monetary value, but what is really pushing that interest and pushing people to actually, put money into this whole industry of the crypto and blockchain industry is the fact that there's a powerful networking ecosystem. The tokenization of everything is what makes people incentivized to participate in the community. And DAOs are a powerful way to really do that for real world operations, a way that is more empowering to individuals than just holding a stock that you bought from, say, E-Trade or Ameritrade, right? Many people don't have much say when they're holding a stock share from a big company. It's going to be very dependent on a big board or an executive team. Whereas with DAOs, you have a lot of say. You have a lot of power to the little guy, to the small fry. No pun intended, right? So it's valuable from a network standpoint in itself to be able to have a say in how the operation is shaped. You being able to decide or having a vote where a store is going to be built. That will never exist if you were invested in a stock that either is a real estate or let's say not real estate, like a food brand that owns many chains, right?
Yeah,
you will
sure.
never have a say in voting where something is built. Whereas in this DAO, it's a discussion to be had. Oh, look, we've got these stores in New York, these stores in LA. Here are the ones that we're looking at. We're going to share that in community. Here are the finances that we found out. And somebody's going to represent the DAO to maybe have a discussion with the broker that's selling them. These are all things that would never happen in a traditional corporation. And so that's empowering. Having that token, there's value to somebody from the network side. Again, though, whether there's monetary value, or that's something, again, we can't say because the SEC doesn't like that. We cannot say that's going to be worth actual money. But I think in the grand scheme of things, people recognize that ability to dictate how the DAO's operation shape is going to be valuable in itself, whether it's network value or monetary value.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this model is really quite interesting. Yeah, for sure. I think in general, I frequent Starbucks a lot, and there's always you can't actually even if you own Starbucks stock, you can't actually tell them, oh, this area needs more Starbucks because every single one I go to is always filled up. You can't get a seat anymore and things like that. So being able to control these things is very interesting. And I do see that some companies are kind of opening it up a little bit. I think there's say.com that does a lot of the investors sort of can now post questions on all the earnings calls and stuff like that. But it's not to the level of granularity as a DAO would be, where you could almost anyone can put up a vote on there if they can get enough people to support it and get it passed through and stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I was also curious, you mentioned one of your initial organizers was a lawyer. How did you kind of find the right people to be the initial organizers? Was that organically, or did you do anything in the process to allow that to come about?
Yeah, well, so that guy, that's Brett. So he actually has been sitting in Moonshot Crypto, the trading group, for the past couple of months. And he was newer into crypto, and then he hit me up one day and was like, what do you think of these tokens? And obviously there were some random trash tokens, and I told him, dude, don't buy this stuff. And I guess I found some free time, or I was feeling like a good mood, because usually I get bombarded with spam and all these messages and all that. And I said, all right, well, let me just reply to him and be like, dude, don't buy this crap. And he's like, why? And we ended up going this conversation, and it ended up going down the route of how to identify good tokenomics, how to identify good fundamentals. And, and from that point on, I realized that he was a very diligent learner. He's generally interested in the space. He was a smart guy, and we just kept chatting for a while. And that's kind of how the conversation started snowballing later on, when we ended up going to these DAOs together, buying these DAO tokens. And he kind of said, why don't we go and buy a McDonald's or something? And the first iteration of the name was McDowell's, or McDowell was going to be the name. But that got taken. That name got taken by Twitter accounts. So we said, oh, well, we're going to think of someone else. So that's how we kind of, the very, very initial stage, kind of dialogue started happening. And then when I kind of shouted out that to more of the general public that I was going to try to form this thing, that's when I started getting messages from people about helping out and joining. And so that started becoming more organic. One of the big value adds we had were in the same trading community. I had not realized that one of the guys, he was part of a company that owns 170 different franchise brands, Domino's and Cold Stone Creamery. So he was sitting in my trading group this whole time, and I had not known. And it turns out that he also invested very early on to a project that also my investment group, Launchco Capital, invested in. So we had a lot of overlap, and I discovered all this. And this whole time we was sitting in the same Discord server, and he said, "Yeah, let me know what I can do with helping the FriesDAO endeavor." I'm like, "Well, let's try to organize the thing." And then he knew Corey Spiroff, who is the former executive at Domino's. So he contacted him and was like, "Are you interested in this thing?" And basically like pitched him on the future of DAOs, and he thought it was fascinating. And then he ended up joining. And then I had known some people in my network from previous projects. VFAT was one of them. So he's VFAT Tools, the founder of that. So he ended up joining. Anyway, basically a mixture of recruiting from our network and people voluntarily asking to kind of contribute and help kind of organize this together. So, and we're still finding this right now. I mean, even in the current Discord, 2 months later, people are identifying themselves as attorneys, or they've worked in commercial lending, and they have people they know that are owners of franchises. So all sorts of people. So it's really exciting, and that's kind of the beauty and the power of DAOs, right? That it's so community driven, and that people are willing to put their time into a novel endeavor that normally you would have to kind of go through your Rolodex or check your contact list and try to call people and sit down for weeks or months to try to put something together, right? And you're either going to ask like, well, what's the pay? What are you paying me? What's the consulting fee or whatever? Whereas in this case, the beauty is, again, the tokenization aspect. So that is what gets people so incentivized to actually put their experience and put their knowledge together and try to actually pull something off. So again, that I think that's going to be something so different, so innovative, and so so much of a potentially effective alternative to what we see today as a traditional corporate sort of model.
Yeah, for sure. I think just the communication aspect of DAOs are really fascinating. Now that you mentioned like how this all came together, it's like really fascinating, because you don't see this much in the real world, where it's like you're either like hiring someone, or maybe you get some advisors on board and stuff like that, but there's no like many nodes all coming together to like really make something happen. It's usually compared to like a regular company or something like that. It's fascinating. Yeah,
and you got to remember, I mean, these companies, they've got a bottom line, and they got shareholders that they need to make happy, right? They got to basically pump their stock and make sure that they're profitable enough to pump their stock. I mean, that's what traditional companies, how they operate, or public traded companies, right? So when their stock isn't doing so well, or rather when their sales and their bottom line is doing so well, the stock is going to plummet. So how do they save that? Because they got pressure from shareholders, from their board and from the public. How do they fix that? Well, they need to cut costs when they're not doing well. If they can't do it from sales, they're not doing well in sales, they got to look for other areas to improve their margins. So they're going to cut costs. And one of the biggest costs is human capital, payroll, right? So oftentimes you see these companies lay people off because they need to fix their bottom line. I mean, one example is recently is Peloton, right? Their stock has tanked, and they cut 2,400 people. They laid off 2,400 employees, and instantly their stock leaps 17%, right? So it makes sense from a textbook Excel sheet point of view, where yes, your expense line goes down, so the margins increase and stock goes up, right? But it doesn't make sense from a logical, humane type of view. Like, okay, you just ruin the livelihood of 2,400 people, but your stock goes up, right? And profits go up. There's always been this inverse relationship, and it's always been viewed quite cynically, and always been kind of protested against the common people. Where like, oh, big bad company, they're terminating their people to get profits. So that doesn't so much exist in DAOs, because the token holders are almost like their own employees, right? People that want to contribute are incentivized to contribute because they hold tokens. They're token holders. So there's an alignment. There's an alignment in incentives. because if you remove people from the DAO, the network value goes down. There's less token holders, the network value goes down. But if you add people into the DAO, there's more knowledge, there's more contribution, there's more value, there's more experience being contributed to the community, then there are more token holders. And so there's value alignment. It's consistent. So there's parallel movement in between the token, and the incentive part, and the amount of work and value being contributed. So it's a model that should be explored, and I think there will be inevitable realization, especially if it's effective in governing and running a real world operation, a business operation. And it'll get to a point where I truly believe that the SEC is going to sit down and kind of rewrite their framework, their regulatory framework around the DAOs, rather than trying to force DAOs into these archaic old frameworks. I think the SEC isn't dumb. They know that the crypto has a lot of Ponzi's and rug pulls and scams, and they really don't like that. And they're trying to figure out how to balance the prevention of that and cracking down on that versus not shutting down complete innovation. So I think the first enterprise, if I can call it that right now, but if the first community, crypto community that can actually run a real world business, employ real people, and actually create increased GDP of a society, the SEC will view that favorably and might even use that as a model, a good model for crypto endeavors in the future. And that's what we want to get to. I mean, this is a genuine effort that to demonstrate, at least within the existing framework, the regulatory framework, that we can actually execute and pull this off and hopefully become a framework for good practice of running a crypto related community or project where others can follow. So that's our grand vision. That's our goal.
Yeah, that's wow, that's really amazing if we can reach that. And I think what you guys are building is the first steps of that. It's really quite amazing. Just kind of hearing about the vision. Yeah, I think DAOs might actually have the potential to really change crypto. Like just starting out in like 2017, 2018, never thought it would like become into something like this that could like really impact, like start getting into real world things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, 2017, 2018, they did try. You know, we try to put everything on the blockchain. If you remember the ICO era, we were trying to put like the dumbest things on the blockchain. We're trying to put bicycles on the blockchain. You know, we had medicine on the blockchain. We had, I don't know, whatever, t-shirts on the blockchain. Who knows? It was the most ridiculous stuff coming about. And I think it was because people just saw there was so much money in crypto and there was a money grab. It was a genuine money grab. I mean, it's still, in a lot of areas, still a money grab. And we see that in things like GameFi and stuff. There's a huge money grab factor. But I mean, in 2017, 2018, what we didn't have was decentralized liquidity. Everything was gated through centralized exchanges. Everything was gated through the Binances and the Coinbases, right?
Right.
So a project without that liquidity was much doomed to fail because there would not be that tokenization incentive because the tokenization, I mean, there's oftentimes, even though they're utility tokens, there's an expectation that they can be exchanged or transferred, right? So if there was no pathway for that, a project would quickly die out because the community will lose interest and they essentially become bag holders, right? So that was the number one problem. And the number two is that the technology wasn't mature enough. I mean, Ethereum was 15 transactions per second. That's just not viable for a real world operation by trying to fit everything onto Ethereum. I mean, Ethereum was pretty much the only smart contract blockchain at that time. And these other competitors were just kind of starting about, right? But now we've got a lot of options. We've got Solana, we've got Cosmos, right? We've got, I guess Polkadot soon, and we've got all these different chain that are high throughput and a bit more, I guess, different set of value propositions between each one. So there's much more choice. But the greatest innovation in the last 2 years in crypto is decentralized finance. This decentralized liquidity, right? So now the Uniswaps and the Sushi swaps, right? They provided a medium for innovation. They're not just exchange trading platforms, but they're enablers for liquidity. And when they're enablers for liquidity, it creates the ability for projects to talk to each other. They can build protocols that are directly able to go through another protocol of another project, and there's a transferability of incentives. So things, the basic foundation, one of the basic foundations is like Curve, right? So Curve allows you to transfer stable coins to another stable coin. That's an exchange or swap in itself, but the ability to transfer stable coins allows protocols to build tools that don't have to rely on, let's say, just USDC for their function. They can build something where their liquidity only has DAI, right? Or they only have USDT. But if they add Curve function into it, now any participant that doesn't have USDT or DAI can still participate in that protocol because it funnels through Curve and then transfers into their native, type of asset that they're dealing with. So it's an enabler. DeFi is an enabler for projects to be able to talk to each other and retain incentive of community participants. But the problem goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It's incestuous because these protocols, no matter how deep you drill down, the derivative layers, the TVL of these tokens, and those specific tokens might be TVL somewhere else, and you keep drilling that down, at the end of the day, it's going to be probably some sort of DeFi loan. And what are DeFi loans used for? The trading, because you can't really leverage like a bank. You're going to use that for trading, right? So again, it's just a loop, an infinite loop. And so there could be a liquidity drain. When it's a bear market, you're going to see a lot of that vanish. And it's a problem.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to get to a point where we're going to revisit the 2017, 2018 era and bring blockchain, trying to fit, these square pegs into round holes. Now it's going to be round pegs in round hole. They're going to actually fit it in because we've got the foundation of liquidity and protocol, I guess, talkability. So that is now enabled. We've seen so many more projects pop up now that are innovative. DeFi has driven innovation because there's that liquidity factor, there's that incentive factor. So we no longer really need to rely purely on the Binances and stuff, right? So we've been seeing so much different innovative protocols come out just these past 2 years versus what you've seen effectively in 2017, 2018. But once we put that two together, now we can start exploring truly real world operations because we've got the financial layer enabled. And it's not even just a financial technology, it's communication technology. And that's where DAOs come in. And that could probably solve that over collateralization problem.
Yeah, for sure. I think the main issue with crypto is like, it's really just how much people put money in and then how much they take out on centralized exchanges at the moment without if we don't access like these real world assets as well. And one of the main issues is that there's not enough stuff that you can do with crypto, right? Like it's not as transactable as cash where you can just walk up to your Starbucks and pay with crypto a lot of times right now. And that's actually one of the issues where like you have all this money, like you could be a billionaire, but like you can't actually use a lot of that money a lot of places. Like there's places like BitRefill where you can buy some gift cards and stuff. But if we have more DAOs out there who actually like own businesses, then those DAOs can actually implement crypto payment. This is like one of the issues where like places like Coinbase or BitPay and places like that, there's not enough people using a lot of them because they're not crypto native companies. But if you have a crypto native company own all these businesses, then you can actually have a forcing function on businesses to actually start accepting crypto and really like bring crypto to the next level as an actual payment.
Exactly. Especially now we've got all these layer 2 and also these high TPS chains that becomes more increasingly viable. And it doesn't mean that people need to pay with crypto. The fact that we can build things on, and now we see things like IoT and MachineFi becoming more viable. I mean, you could have point of sale, transaction registers, cash registers, where whatever transaction requires, maybe it's a credit card payment, whatever. You could technically translate that on chain using some sort of, again, liquidity protocol, whether it's third party or whether it's native built by the project. But you can capture that information on chain. And if you can capture that information on chain, that means it's essentially a real-time sort of audit of the finances and the financial health of that business operation. So you no longer need to rely on things like quarterly earnings reports or things like that. You now have a pure view of how the business is operating from a financial performance standpoint. And when you have that kind of purity, then you don't have to worry about, a stock tanking because the CEO, committed some sort of moral or anti-moral thing, or cheating on his wife. Like, why would a CEO cheating on his wife suddenly tank the stock, right? I mean, that's happened. That could happen, or that has happened before. Completely irrelevant. But yet, people see that thing and they're like, oh, well, here you've got this pure transactional numerical system where if it performs well and it's tokenized and you can see it on chain, then the project does well and the token does well and all the token holders are happy. Right. So it could be an efficient system like that. And if there's enough of projects like this, then you can take your, I don't know, let's say McDonald's token and go to a Macy's and swap that for some clothes, right? There could be that fungibility aspect. But that's obviously potential utopian thinking that might take many years, but it's not to say it's impossible. And I think one of the stages here is DAOs to figure that out. There's gotta be a human element. We had the DAO in 2017, but there was not enough human element. It was all smart contract. Smart contracts are prone to hacking if it's written poorly by human. So with DAOs, though, there's still human involvement and human vetting, and I think we need that. It can't be completely, unless we have like some genius AI, but I don't think that's going to be that case for many years. So yes, definitely DAOs are a huge potential in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I think it seems like crypto is becoming more and more like human driven in some ways. I see like a lot of the best like investors or things like that. They're not necessarily like using some type of bot or something to buy these cryptos. It's actually like really fundamental analysis and things like that. A lot of these projects and stuff. Yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, I think that's also really interesting where you say like you could actually keep a record of all these businesses on crypto. Essentially, like if you can access like the Square payments APIs or stuff like that, you can verify it's legit how much they make. You can actually like maybe make some crypto loans to them or something like that and keep a record of it on the chain or something. And that could also be another way to bridge it into the real world, which is kind of interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean that's what kind of a blockchain is. It's a tokenized or crypto monetized universal API. That's kind of how I view it. And APIs are great because it lets protocols or sites talk to each other, but this is now a crypto version that's monetized for it inherently, natively. So there's a lot of crazy innovations that we could potentially do. I mean, even things like FriesDAO, like if this is actually successful, then a Fries token is considered, to have backing of real world operations in a successful manner. So if one day, let's say we figure out how to be compliant with regulations, or we move into regulation compliant, securities value, and these Fries tokens have, legitimate recognition of actual financial backing, financial value, profit driven, then it can be easily integrated on chain by other projects. They'll use Fries as a collateral. Fries collateral can then become much more valuable and trustworthy because it's tied into the real world, right? So
yeah, for sure.
I'm sure many projects could move into that one day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and even if you just accept the Fries token at some of your stores to like purchase McDonald's, that actually starts making the Fries token valuable because there's a ton of people that use gift card sites like Refill to like buy with Dogecoin or Litecoin to like purchase these gift cards. But if they can just purchase a token instead, that's already the value right there, right? Like it's actually already bridging, and you could build value on your token just based on that without needing people to have any profits or anything from that. I mean,
on the other side of things, it doesn't even have to be spending the tokens. It could be marketing campaigns that we do for the brands. Like, let's say we have a network of 50 FriesDAO type stores around the country, and let's say the community votes, in the next 2 weeks for a period of time, that anybody that goes to the New York City FriesDAO McDonald's will now be able to claim some free airdrop Fries tokens. I mean, that right there probably will drive traffic to the store. And so that network value, again, that's compounded exponential network value, is going to be viewed by brands as a type of marketing campaign or type of marketing value. It's brand recognition, right? And there's a ecosystem, the community behind it, where it's going to drive people to the store. Sure, and maybe they'll get the Fries tokens, but they're also going to spend probably some money while they're there and buy something,
Yeah,
and
sure.
so it could certainly become a marketing revenue type system for the DAO beyond just relying on the stores. But we could go to a brand and say, look, this is the amount of value that we can bring to your brand because we've grown our community from 5,000 Discord members to 50,000 Discord members. So we have weight now, in our brand recognition, and that the brand is willing to pay the DAO, $250,000 to do this campaign for them. So it can work both ways. That's the beauty of crypto and the beauty of tokenization, that there's a alignment of incentives. That's what people need to understand, right? It's not really about expectation of profits or getting some dividends. I mean, when's the last time a stock really gave you dividends? Very few. So it's not really that. It's about owning the network. It's not so much owning the equity or owning the store itself or owning the business itself. It's owning the network value. And that's the beauty of crypto. And that I think people are increasingly understanding that. I mean, there's certainly resistance from retail and from some institutions that just don't get it. But I think it's becoming more clear when they see things like Shiba token and Doge token performing exceptionally well, because they really don't have true utility behind them. They're meme tokens, but yet is there so much interest? Why do they have so much value, so much and so much influence? Is because there's a huge community behind them, and that's the value, the network value effect.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting. We're almost coming up on 1 hour, so I think I'll probably just put it in the last question. Is like,
Sure.
Do you have any advice to or things that I should have asked but I didn't ask that would be helpful to others that maybe are starting their own DAOs, or might be having some issues finding their initial community members or things like that, just general advice to people building DAOs and things like that from what you've seen from other DAOs and also building your own DAO? Yeah.
I guess, a question you could ask is, what's the compelling message that you have to get people interested in your idea or in your project, right? So you have to be able to, I mean, one thing we don't learn in school is how to be a salesperson. There's no sales class. Even in business school, there's no sales class. But every day we're selling. We're trying to sell ourselves, sell an idea, sell something, convince somebody to get buy-in and agree with you. So you need to think about what is the compelling narrative and compelling message that you want people to really understand and agree with. So you have to identify pain points. What people really either want problem solved and be articulate in conveying that, and not just trying to hop on a hype train. It could help, but if you're not really well known, if you don't really have connections, then you really need to be driving a compelling message to solve a problem, and you have to build it. You have to demonstrate the credibility to build it. It's going to be very difficult if you're a complete, I guess a nobody in the social world, let's say in the social media space. It's very hard to convince people, even if you have a compelling message. So the way you have to do that is slowly build your network and build your message through thought leadership pieces, through articles, through tweets that get people to really acknowledge your innovative thinking, and put clarity on the pain points and how you could address them. For example, when I talk about this over collateralization problem, I think people understand it, but they don't know how to articulate it. So when I'm able to frame it for them in a way that it's understandable and how they can see how it contrasts to a bank and why there's value in under collateralization, I mean, that's what compels people to then realize that there's something here that's greater. And so you have to convey yourself, you put out these thought pieces, you have to share that kind of vision. And only that way you can slowly build up your network. So I don't recommend, if you don't really have a strong network, I don't recommend you suddenly say, I got an idea for a DAO and then like spam people. It's not going to work. I got to be completely honest. That's not going to work. You're going to have to build your network slowly. You're going to have to do what you're doing right here. Like, obviously you're not like a giant YouTuber, no offense or anything, but I mean, you're not BitBoy, right?
Yeah,
but
for
you're
sure.
doing something great where you're creating content, you're building, and you're slowly bridging a network for yourself. So it will take time, and I think the best advice I can give you is to keep building and be patient, but think about building your network.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
I've talked about network value and network effects this entire time, and I can't stress that enough. Crypto is about network. So make relationships and show that you can add value. You're creating content, and people will pay more attention to you. And be proactive, right? If you're doxed or you're willing to dox, LinkedIn is a great resource to reach out to people, and just go down a list of candidates and be like, hey, I'm building this. Here are some thought leadership pieces. If you have time to just check it out, somebody will eventually pay attention and listen to you. I've done that before for my businesses when I was a nobody in my other, real life business endeavors, where I had to find some advisors. And I just said, look, I'll give you a piece of the company and just look at my pitch, this one page pitch. I just went down on like 100-something people until I had like 1 or 2 people actually agree to it. And then they introduced me to somebody else, and that introduced me to somebody else. And I continued to demonstrate, that I'm not a dumb person, and that I can actually show you that I have a particular way of thinking that might solve a problem for a market or an issue for customers. And you just got to sell yourself on that. So that's my advice.